What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's discussion in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or living on a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another sit down video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to delve into a breaking news story. And several days ago, we learned about the very sad demise of a member of the Genovese crime family. It all happened back on June 12th, about 12 days ago. What exactly happened to 86-year-old Anthony Conigliaro? Today, I'm going to delve in a little bit to him, his life in the Mafia, and his very sad and brutal death. The story of Anthony Conigliaro next on the sit down. Anthony Conigliaro was born in 1938, so he's been around a while. Remember, at the time of his death, he was 86 years old. Now, what I want to do first is go into exactly what happened here. Now, Mr. Conigliaro lived in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, on Dahlgren Place. He lived in an apartment building at the end of the street. And this unfortunate event happened very close to his home. So we can venture he was walking somewhere in the neighborhood. That's how he got around. He's pretty old, but from what I can gather, he was in decent shape. He was still out walking around doing his thing. On June 12th, during the day, you can see Mr. Conigliaro from Dahlgren walking. And unfortunately, I can't play the video because it is a little bit graphic. But he walks essentially through a crosswalk, and I guess a truck, a DOT truck, a Department of Transportation truck with a crane on it, one of those bucket trucks, if you will, makes a right turn and just barrels into him. And right where he is, he's right under both tires. Now, the crash was so severe, it would decapitate Mr. Conigliaro. And what's so graphic about this is you see a certain part of his body rolling down the street. It is completely graphic. It is completely awful. And no person deserves to go out that way. Just a freak thing, an accident. I'd have to wonder if it's some sort of wrongful death suit will be posed here. They actually showed the DOT worker. He was just some young guy, very distraught, very upset. We didn't know who it was, the victim, for a long time. In fact, over a week, over the weekend, it was discussed and identified that it was 86-year-old Anthony Conigliaro. I want to give a little background of Conigliaro because he is a bit kind of muted. You don't know much about him, hear much about him. He was definitely a very low-key guy. But he has popped up over the years in photos. Here he can be seen with Genovese Capo Conrad Ainiello. He can also be seen here with Matty the Horse Ainiello. Obviously, as I said, Conigliaro was born way back in 1938. But from what I know and what I've researched, in some of the pictures we've seen him in, some of the people he moved around with, most of the people he was moving around with Genovese were with the Manhattan faction of the Ainiellos, Jimmy Ida. So we can venture to believe he was likely from Little Italy, though he lived in Brooklyn for a pretty long period of time, which I don't believe that he's from there, but he did live in Brooklyn for really the last 25-ish years as far as property records indicate. Now, we do know that Conigliaro was pinched back in the early 2000s alongside Joseph Ida. Now, Joe Ida is the brother of one-time Genovese consigliere James the Little Guy Ida. Now, Little Guy is serving life. He was involved with an indictment alongside Barney Bellomo, Mickey Domino Generuso. He decides to not take a plea and gets life. Those two guys took a plea and got out, and Ida was very upset. In fact, Ida actually went to Chin Gigante to try to have Bellomo whacked, and Chin nixed the decision. But Tony Conigliaro was jammed up in a loan sharking case alongside Joe Ida Jimmy's brother. And ultimately, Conigliaro pled guilty and was sentenced to 13 months in prison. Other than that, there's not much known about him. I do know that at one point he was the acting captain. My guess is it was of the Ida crew, because Ida eventually was taken up to Consigliere. Matty the Horse was taken up to acting boss. So I'd have to think it came in around the early 2000s. We do know that Conigliaro was close with Matty the Horse. And look, Matty the Horse is a huge earner, a guy who made a ton of money. And, also his nephew Conrad, who, is still allegedly in the streets today. Conigliaro was involved with the watch business, which his known nickname, as far as I know, was Tony Watches. Mr. Conigliaro had a company called Smacks Watch Company, and he had that company for a pretty long period of time. He was in the jewelry watch business at one point. He also, towards the late parts of his life, and from what I understand, over the last 5-ish or more years, Conigliaro was more retired. Obviously he'd always had the mobster connection. He was a made guy in the Mafia, and it just doesn't stop because you get older. But as far as I know, he was more retired at this point and just kind of living out the rest of his life. Once he got out of prison in the late 2000s, it was said that he started some sort of sweets company. According to what I know, he established a corporation called Coney Island Sweets Incorporated. He also had a company called Famous Coney Island Cheesecakes, and he was selling his cheesecakes and other sweets to local bakeries and sweet shops and things of that nature in and around Brooklyn. Probably wasn't making a ton of money, just something he probably enjoyed doing. He's an Italian guy, just enjoyed making sweets and things of that nature. And he created a little bit of a side business for himself. And that would get him the nickname Tony Cakes. As far as I know, though, he had been baking and things like that for a pretty long time, and people enjoyed his cheesecake and other stuff. So, this is a really sad story, but I think, as we know, the media is generally quite vague with when they put this stuff out. They just say, "Oh my God, a mobster." But as far as I know, Mr. Conigliaro has pretty much retired at this point. I don't believe he's still active and out there in the streets, but it makes for good headlines. I saw people calling him a mob boss. He was not a mob boss. He was an acting captain at one point, never an official captain, mostly a button man, a soldier. I know a lot of people will say to me, when was he made? I do not know. This guy was pretty muted. There's not a lot of info on him. The only thing that I know is he did catch a case. I looked into the case. It was a loan sharking case, an extortionate means case, nothing crazy. As far as I can find, there's no, violence in his record. There's no nothing. I know a lot of people also probably ask in the comments, is he related at all to Alex Conigliaro, who is a made member of the Genovese family? Not that I know of. I don't believe they're related at all. They just have the same last name and happen to be in the same family. We have to realize that at this point, Conigliaro, most of the people he was around, whether it be Jimmy Ida or, Conrad or Matty the Horse, most of those guys are dead. Conrad's pretty old. He's been in and out of jail. So, again, 86 years old, a very sad way to go out. When you're this old, you want to die in your own bed, and not like this. The one thing I did want to mention, I thought it was pretty sad, some of the quoting in this story, people saying some pretty rude things. I know people want to take shots. The guy was in the mob, but at the end of the day, some of the comments I thought were a little insensitive. And people just kind of loop it up to, oh, well, he's a mobster. He deserves it. Look, I'm not going to try to sell to you that this guy was a great, upstanding member of society for most of his life, and he may have did some bad things. But at the end of the day, he was 86 years old. No one deserves to go out this way. And I thought the jokes were a little insensitive, at least to me. I know at times none of us are perfect. I've said my fair share of things on here, but I think it's important in certain cases like this to keep it just muted and normal. But Anthony Conigliaro dead at the age of 86. And that's that. So yeah, that's that for the video. Again, not that much known about this guy. We do know that he was a made guy, and that's about it. Other than that, that's that. Thanks for watching. What do you think about this situation? Pretty sad. Let me know in the comments below. We'll see you next week here on the Sit Down.